Hi everyone, Danny here with Langmuir Systems. You're watching the second video of the CrossFire assembly series. In the last video, we unboxed the machine, and in this video, we will be assembling the frame of the machine. Now first, let's go over the components that you'll need. You'll need the lower rail tube, both of the lower cross tubes, which say CrossFire on them. You'll need the upper cross tube, which says Langmuir Systems, and you'll need the 4 leg tubes. You'll also need the 4 swivel casters, 2 of them which have locks. You'll need the 20 aluminum tube spacers. You'll need the 4 tube caster inserts. You'll need the shim holder bracket. And you'll need bag 1, frame bolts short, bag 3, frame bolts long, and bag 4, frame washers and nuts. Now let's go over the tools that you'll need. You'll need a soft-faced hammer, such as a dead blow hammer, a ratchet with a 9/16 socket and an extension, 2 9/16 wrenches, and a square. We'll be using a machinist square, but you can also use something such as an aluminum contractor square or a protractor. Now we're ready to start assembling. First, take the lower cross tubes that say CrossFire on them and place them on your workbench. Next, take the upper cross tube, the one that says Langmuir Systems on it, and place this tube on top of the lower cross tubes. Next, take the lower rail tube and place it on top of the lower cross tubes. Now there's a couple things that are important as far as orientation. For the lower rail tube, you'll want to make sure that the 2 small holes are facing in towards the center of the square that we formed. Additionally, you'll want to make sure that the large holes here are facing upward. For the upper cross tube, you want to make sure that the Langmuir Systems logo is facing outward and is right side up. Next, adjust the positions of the tubes so that the holes are in alignment. Do this at all 4 corners. Now is a good time to point out the small holes that are visible on the lower cross tubes. You'll notice that the tubes that you have don't have these holes. This is because this machine has already been assembled and a water table has been installed on these, which is what produced these holes. So just disregard these holes for now. Next, you'll need 4 aluminum spacers, the 4 bolts in bag number 1, 2 washers from bag number 4, and 4 hex nuts from bag number 4. Now I'll install a bolt through this corner. So I take the aluminum spacer, pass the bolt through the spacer, and then install the bolt through this hole. Feed it all the way through until the end of the bolt extends into the bottom side of the Langmuir Systems tube. Take a washer, install it on the bolt, and then hand tighten the hex nut onto the bolt. Let's take a closer look on this corner. Pass the aluminum spacer onto the bolt. Pass the spacer and bolt through the hole until it extends into the Langmuir Systems tube. Pass a washer onto the bolt and then tighten the hex nut. Just hand tightened. Next, install the bolt into this corner hole until it passes through both of the tubes. Take an aluminum spacer and pass it through the bottom hole until it slides over the fastener. Take a hex nut, screw it onto that bolt. Let's do the same and take a closer look on this corner. Take the bolt, pass it through the hole until it extends through both tubes. Take the aluminum spacer, install it through the bottom hole until it slides over the fastener, and then install the hex nut hand tight. Before I can tighten these fasteners, I need to first make sure that the frame of the machine is square. To do that, I'll be using our machinist square. I lay the square into the corner and adjust the frame until it's square. I do this for opposing diagonal corners. With the frame square, I can use the ratchet with the 9/16 socket and a 9/16 wrench to tighten the back bolts. I use two 9/16 wrenches to tighten the front bolts. In this step, I'll be installing the caster tube inserts. To do that, we'll need the soft-faced mallet. Now, the tube caster inserts get installed in the bottom of the leg tube, which is opposite of the large holes on the other end of the tube. To install the tube caster insert, place the tube caster insert into the hole, and then give it a couple of taps with the mallet to pound it into the end of the tube. Do the same for the remaining 3 tubes. Now we can begin installing the leg tubes onto the frame. To make it easier to install the legs on the frame, I'll be flipping the frame upside down so that the legs will be installed pointing upward. So I'll do that now. Now let's go over the hardware that's required to install the legs. You'll need all of the remaining aluminum tube spacers. You'll need all of the bolts that are located in bag number 3. You'll need 8 hex nuts that are located in bag number 4. You'll also need the shim bracket, which gets installed on one of the corners of the machine. Taking a close look at the leg tubes, you'll notice that 2 of the tubes have these 3 small holes. These holes are used to mount the electronics enclosure, so it's important that this tube gets installed in the correct location. So I'll be installing this tube first, and take careful note at where this tube gets installed. These 2 holes, large holes, correspond to the small holes here. So when I set this tube into the corner, those holes will be in alignment. Now I can take the aluminum spacers and pass them into these holes. One there, one there. I take another set of aluminum spacers and pass them through the opposing holes. Now I can install the bolts. With the bolts passed all the way through the spacers, I can install the nuts on the other side. .9/16 wrenches are used to tighten these bolts. You'll notice that the 3 small holes that were mentioned earlier are facing outward. You'll also notice that the bolts were installed from the outside in. So the head of the bolt should be here, and the head of the bolt should be here. The other leg with the 3 mounting holes will get installed on this corner. Similar to the last leg, I get the holes in alignment. Take 2 aluminum tube spacers, pass them through the first set of holes. Take another set of aluminum tube spacers, pass them through the lower holes. Take the shim bracket that gets installed right here. We'll take a bolt, pass it through the hole in the shim bracket till it passes through. Like that. I'm going to put a nut on there to keep things secure. Take another bolt, pass it through the lower hole. Sometimes you have to shake the tubes a little bit to get the holes to be in alignment. That bolts all the way through. I'll take a hex nut and screw it onto the end of the bolt. Now I'm going to visually align the bracket so that it is in alignment to the CrossFire tube, and I can go ahead and tighten this. With that done, I can go ahead and get these other remaining legs installed. The last step is to install the casters into the tube caster inserts. There's locking casters and non-locking casters. We recommend installing the locking casters into the back leg tubes, which are here and here. When you install the caster, screw it into the tube caster insert all the way until it's fully seated. Once it's fully seated, back it off 2 turns. What this does is allow you adjustability in the upward and downward direction later on, which comes in handy when leveling your machine. So I'll back it off 2 full turns. Now that caster's set. Now all that's left to do is get the frame assembly flipped over and sitting on its wheels. This completes the assembly of the frame. Stay tuned for the next video where we will be installing the upper rail and the gantry assembly. Thanks for watching.